Today we're going to be putting a winch on a Polaris Sportsman. This is a 23-570 Sportsman. And this is the winch we're putting on. This is a 3,000 pound synthetic rope winch. So I'm a dealer for Moto Alliance. This is a Midnight Series 3,000 pound, as well as the Moto Alliance winch mount, which there's your part number right there. So the winches themselves are very universal. They'll basically work the same regardless what brand you have. The big thing is kind of each ATV does require its own model specific mount. So in this case, this Polaris mount works for basically all the 570s, pretty much all the Polarises, about 2013 and newer and stuff. The 570s, the 800s, the 850s and 550s and stuff too. So we're going to start putting this together here, and I'll show you step by step what it all takes. All right, so this winch is going to slide into this mount through the side here and then bolt into these bolt holes back there. But the first thing I like to do is free spool a bunch of this cable out and slip it on the other side of this rod, so that when it's poking out of our hole over here, it just lines up a little bit better. So we'll do that quick, and then we'll assemble this winch into the winch mount. You can see here, that's what I was talking about, slipping it on the other side. It just makes this whole thing line up a little bit nicer inside the winch mount. All right, I've attached the cable guide here, just 2 bolts there. I'll take my cable, slip that through there, and then we'll slide our winch through here as well. All right, and then the back side, we'll take these 2 brackets, bolt them up there, and then our winch mount will be assembled. This is all assembled, 4 bolts, tighten that down. Got everything put together there. The next step is this front grill guard thing here. We're gonna pull a bolt out there, and then there's 2 Torx head bolts right there. Then this front cover will come off, and then that's where our winch is gonna set back into. That cover is removed. Now our winch is gonna set back into this cavity and bolt into those bolt holes on both sides. And this is the same procedure that'll work on pretty much all the newer Sportsmans in the last 10-15 years. Like I said, all the 500, the 800, the 550, 850, and 570 and 1000 Sportsman. Anything after about that kind of 2011-12 year range or so on up. The winch is mounted in here with those 2 bolts on each side. So now it's time to start running some wires. So most of the time, these universal winches will come with a universal mount like this. You rarely use that. That's really only meant for if you're mounting it onto like a flat plate or something just kind of generic. So yeah, for the actual ATV mount, you won't use those at all. But, so this is our solenoid actuator here. So these are all color coded. The red and the black are going to your battery, and then the blue and the yellow are going to be going to the winch, which will correspond to blue and yellow on there. So now the next step is to run some wires. I have my wires attached to the solenoid here. So now we need to find a spot to mount this. On these 570s, where I like to mount them is usually on one of these tubes right here, and use 2 self-tapping screws to run them in there and hold the thing in place, kind of just like this. In the case of the 570s, our battery is on the front side of the motor. In this case, it's right underneath the front box. On some of the other Sportsmans like the 500 and 800s and stuff, that battery is usually under the seat or back under this wheel well. So then what I'll do is I'll mount that solenoid back here and then run the wires back there, just closer to the battery. That solenoid is mounted there with those self-tapping screws. The yellow and blue wires are connected down to the winch. Now our red and black wires are going to go to the battery. The positive and negative wires are hooked to the battery. In the case of these new body style 570s, the battery's right up here. The older style 570s, there were still heavy gauge terminals underneath this front cover that went directly to the battery. So it's real easy to hook into those instead of the battery that was down below on the bottom rail. The 550s and 850s also have the battery up under the hood just like this. So we'll pop this little cover out here, and then we're gonna run our control wire for our switch. This is our control switch here, the in-out button. So these have 3 wires going to them. In this case, we got a green and a black. This is going to the starters or to the solenoid. Then those are also labeled color-wise, and 1 red wire. And this one just needs to find a 12-volt power source. What I like to do is wire these into an accessory power so that this comes on and off with the key. Sometimes you'll see people run these straight to the battery, and then the winch will work with the key on or off. The rocker switch is mounted. This just clamps to the handlebar. Little trick I do is I usually loosen up these screws right here so I can slide this master cylinder a little farther away, and then I'll put it back where it belongs. Now we just need to run the wires down to the solenoid, and then on all Polarises, there's always an accessory wire up underneath the little hood or steering column area, or sometimes down in this area. It's always like an orange and a black or orange and a white, and that's a 12-volt accessory power, where all we'll need to do is put a little spade connector on this end there and plug that in there, and then we'll have power that turns on and off with the key. This 570, those little accessory power wires are hiding right down here. So they're two orange wires, and they've just got a spade connector right there. So we'll put a spade connector on that red one and plug it in there, and then we'll have power. This is the connector added to my red power wire, and it's going to go right down in there. We'll do that, and then we'll check and see if the winch works. Wires are all hooked up. Turn our key on here, check and see if our winch works. So out, moving, in. We'll double check down here too. Go in. Oh, this isn't engaged. There we go. In, sucking in, and out. Okay, so now we just need to tidy up all of our wires with some zip ties and then put that front cover back on, and we're done. Okay, here's the final product installed. There was a little cover, this little cover right here that you need to pop out. There's just two plastic rivets that hold that in, and it allows that winch to come out. So that's it. That's a full installation on pretty much any winch installed on pretty much all the newer Sportsmans.